been doing at Palo Alto High School for the last 32 years, can you believe? I have been teaching journalism, and I built this program at Palo Alto High School from a small group of 19 kids to the largest in the nation. Today we have over 600 kids and 9 teachers. So the question is why? And so I think the answer is the only way to predict the future is to have the power to shape the future. I think it's really an important thing. And so my goal is to empower students so they shape their future. And the question is, why isn't that true for all of school? Well, I would say most classes today, in like 90% of the schools, they're telling students what to do all the time. You sit there, you get a lecture, you take notes, you get a test. And so what is a moonshot in education? That's the name of the book, Moonshots in Education. Moonshot in Education is to empower students. And you cannot empower them as long as you do everything for them. So it means changing the mindset of the teacher. Instead of being the lecturer in the center of this classroom, you have to give kids some control of their learning, and you have to move to the side. Well, this sounds like it's really simple, but it's not simple, unfortunately. What happens is teachers want total control. It makes sense. They want total control because they're in charge of the tests, right? And so if the kids don't test well, they feel really like they've done a bad job, and the whole administration feels that way. So what do? They teach to the test. So one of the things is that, you cannot teach some of the skills that we're talking about here. How about creativity? Can you learn to be creative by reading a chapter in a book about it? I wonder. How about, can you learn to communicate by reading a book about how to communicate? So we need to move the teacher from a sage on the stage model to, quote, guide on the side. And this is what it takes in the classroom. This is my little acronym that I made up. The trick is trick. Trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. So I just have to take a look in the classrooms that you remember. Like, how much did they trust you? How many people needed to have a pass to go to the bathroom? You have to raise your hand in the middle class that you have to go to the bathroom. That's a little embarrassing, right? Or respect. No respect for the ideas of the kids. So the mindset of the teacher has to change. It's really important. So the more you do for a student, the less empowered they feel. Just feel it. The more you do for anybody, the less empowered they are. That means they need you all the time. So we need to change the way the way the world sees education. So my suggestion to try to get your foot in the door, since I've been a teacher for all those years, and I know that teachers are never going to give up lecturing, no matter how hard you try. I've tried, so it don't work. So this is my latest scheme, and that is let students control their learning for just 20% of the time. So I call it the 20% time. So you can do it. You can lecture for 80% of the time, teach toward the test, have kids sit in rows, all that stuff for 80% of the time. Just how about 20% of the time? Give them a taste of what's coming in the 21st century now. So this is an example of what it looks like in my classes. Notice there's no teacher there telling anybody what to do. And I'll just go through these rapidly. This is my classes. And I should just tell you, in this particular class, last year I had 100 kids. So why would you have 100 kids? And how can you manage that? Well, it turns out that if the kids have peer-to-peer interaction, they learn to collaborate, and they learn more from collaboration with their peers than they learn by listening to me. And all the educational research shows that 80% of all the learning takes place out of class anyway, so why not just bring the out of class into class? This is also my class. So we need to empower kids so they can control their future. That's kind of the key. So what kind of stuff? This is journalism I just happen to be doing, but it works for all subject areas. It works for everything that we're going to be talking about. Actually, the maker people that are right next door, I wanted to bring them in, by the way, because that's what people could be doing in that 20% time. This is a student newspaper, comes out every 2 to 3 weeks. It's 3 sections, 28 pages. Everything is done by students. Here's the paper again. And you can see that it looks pretty professional. This is their website. It's updated 3 times a day. The students do everything. This is a magazine, the C magazine. We copied the New York Times magazine. Hope the New York Times is appreciative of this anyway.
Their lawyers will be calling.
Thank you, good. Anyway, and so this is Verde, this is a news magazine. So I have to have 9 publications because we have so many students. And this is for all the guys, this is sports magazine. And they look professional, but they're all kids. And they write about each other and they take pictures of each other. It looks pretty cool. This is a photography magazine. Whatever you're interested in, you can do. And there's a platform for this kind of work. Anyway, this is just an example. This is me and this class happens to be here about 70 kids. So this is me and all the kids. And that's me in pink. So this just to give you an idea, it does work if you let students have some control of their learning.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leila, give us a sense of what you do at Learning.
Absolutely. And actually, it's LRNG, but without learning without vowels. So full disclosure, although I'm at a nonprofit right now, I'm actually from tech sector, first Adobe and then Microsoft, and prior to that, media arts and sciences. So I love tech. I'm an optimist. I have that abundance mindset. But what you'll hear me talk about over the next couple of minutes is some of the major issues that we need to address in order to make abundance for all possible in the future. So I'll start by sharing a few data points before I tell you more about LRNG, a few data points that keep me up at night. And the first data point is that 20% of teens, and that's 1 in 5, are dropping out of high school before they graduate. And I don't know if you know that, but 75% of all of our nation's prison population are high school dropouts. The second data point is that 60% of high school students are not engaged in school. So they are in school, but they're actually not learning. The third number that I want you to keep in mind, especially as we have a conversation later on, is 5.6 million. That's 1 in 7, 16 to 24-year-olds that are disconnected from both school and work. And disconnected youth cost taxpayers $93 billion annually, or $1.6 trillion over their lifetime in lost revenue and increased social services. So the last data point that I think is important, especially for a lot of the businesses here, is that 40% of the US companies cannot find qualified workers. And they're either underskilled or unskilled completely. And employers spend more on talent development and skills training than universities and government combined. So while we do live in a time of an amazing learning abundance and technological innovation that we've been talking about over the past couple of days, at the same time, we have an alarming inequality because the learning in the 21st century is still fragmented and disconnected from the real-world opportunities. And our systems, like schools, unless you're in Esther's class, do not organize learning opportunities and make them visible and accessible and connected to real world for all of our young people. So yes, the future is here, but it's not evenly distributed, as William Gibson once said. And the research shows us that what young people need is access, it's inspiration, and guidance. And this is something that from about a decade worth of research in connected learning and 3 years of piloting in cities of learning that we know that there's no single institution that can do this alone. So building on what Esther was sharing about teachers, for us, the moonshot is to make learning accessible to all youth, where the birth lottery does not decide whether you get access to learning opportunities and tools or not. Learning that is designed to spark interest, so you actually get excited about learning data science in the context, let's say, fashion or music. And learning that provides what our society needs, whether it's employers today or whether the society might need in the future. So a little bit about LRNG before we open it up for Q&A. At LRNG, which is a national nonprofit initiative funded in part by MacArthur Foundation, we're working to close the opportunity gap for the disconnected youth by really transforming how they access learning experiences and the paths that they can take to future success. And we're a nonprofit that provides youth-first, technology-enabled ecosystem of learning. We do this online, and we also do this in urban communities across the nation. And we are currently in 12 different communities in the US, including here, San Jose, and then also in California, San Diego, West Sacramento, as well as a number of other cities. So what we're doing also in these cities is combining, combating the fragmentation that we've been talking about, especially Salim yesterday in your presentation, by bringing together city leaders, businesses, community institutions like museums and libraries, nonprofit organizations like Boys and Girls Club, to build an ecosystem of learning that combines in-school, out-of-school, employer-based, and online learning experiences that are open and visible to all youth. And together, we're starting to build a learning foundation that ultimately will deliver on 4 key areas. One is making learning visible and accessible to all young people. One of the ways that we're doing that, and if you go to lrng.org, you'll be able to see that, is by actually having a set of tools that enable us to capture learning wherever it happens, whether it's online, so let's say on YouTube or Vimeo, or it's in person at a workshop at a Carnegie Museum of Sciences in Pittsburgh, where you might be taking an app development workshop. We're also focused on making learning interest-driven and real-world oriented, and we do that in one of the really interesting ways by actually bringing employers to the table and working with companies like Gap, Fossil, Best Buy to create what we're calling playlists that are, number one, aligned to what kids are interested in learning. So let's say it's fashion, it's music, but also very much responding to the labor market needs. And again, we're focusing both on the hard skills and soft skills like time management, communication, collaboration. The third aspect is really making learning openly networked, where anyone can participate, whether you are a business with an incredible skills training curriculum, or you are a MOOC, or Boys and Girls Club, or any museum or library. You can network those learning resources within the LRNG framework. And it's lifelong. Learning needs to be a lifestyle. Learning needs to be continuous in order to adapt the exponential change that we are experiencing. And the last aspect is learning is production-oriented. A great example of production-oriented learning is what Esther just shared with the newspapers, with the magazines that her students produce. And also for us, learning is evidence-based. And this is where we believe that digital badges can provide evidence for learning that can happen anywhere. And badges also become a much more meaningful signals of somebody's competencies, as well as include proof of work, like a project that a young person has worked on. So in closing, turning our static education system into a fully functional, dynamic learning ecosystem that, as Esther noted, benefits youth, but also benefits the society, is truly a moonshot. And I hope you're going to join us, at least in the conversation, if not, to make this possible. Thank you.
One question before we open it up to the group. If you have any questions, please think about them. We'll get to you just in a second. What's the biggest challenge each of you is facing? And how, it's extraordinary the work they're each doing. How do you scale what you do?
The biggest challenge is the teacher in the classroom and changing the mindset so that they can actually implement some of the things you're talking about. So what you suggested would fit perfectly into this 20% time. It's kind of like the Reggio Emilio Montessori system in high school. You have this opportunity, maybe maker's opportunity, and then let the kids choose what they want to do. Something else besides being lectured to. But getting the teacher and the administration to change their vision of what education is, it's the culture. How do you change it?
Yeah. For us, it is really reaching some of the most disconnected and disengaged youth, and one of the reasons why, in addition to being online, so accessible to all youth and free, we're in these communities where disconnected youth live. We are, as somebody mentioned yesterday, we're in the barbershops, on the street corners, on basketball courts, working with the Department of Family Support Services in order to bring the kids back to and make these learning experiences visible to them. So that's one challenge that we are actively addressing through just presence on the ground. Number two is really kind of going back to the digital badges, so this notion of creating evidence of learning where learning can really happen anywhere at any time, and creating a currency around the badges. So there are two ways that we're starting to really address that, and this is just the beginning. Number one is working with the employers and with post-secondary institutions to create the badges that ultimately map to what they're looking for, that they would actually endorse and accept as currency. Number two is working with city officials, like mayors. So earlier this summer, the U.S. Conference of Mayors passed a resolution that encourages all communities across the nation to use digital badges, and specifically LRNG's digital badging framework, which is based on Mozilla MacArthur Foundation's open badging framework, in several key instances that matter to youth, on college applications, on financial aid applications, and for employment. So this is a challenge and something that we invite all of you to join us and help us with.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. We were discussing with Salim 2 nights ago, talking about the meaning of life, and I shared an experience that touches me very closely. About 15 years ago, we had in Argentina one of our worst crisis, economy, but social, that hit us really bad. So I think that put us in an unprecedented moral crisis in terms of the values of the young generation. They grew up looking at peers or their parents that went to loot, and that was okay. So is it, for any of you, do you think that you can hack and reprogram moral values to increase the importance of things like collaboration and respect, which kids that grew up through that right now don't value? And I think abundance is quite difficult to bring up in that sort of society that we have right now.
Either of you want to take this?
So, in the beginning, all the kids are a captive audience, right? They start at like age 6. They drop out starting in 9th grade. You have those years to teach what you're talking about. So why not do it then? These kids want to be there because they want to see their friends. And the only reason that they're going to leave or not learn collaboration, communication, critical thinking is because the school doesn't promote it. So the elementary teachers are really important. Kindergarten teachers, the children need to like being at school. So, you want to capture them after school, in community centers and things like that, which is great. But, if they have to be there by law, why not make it fun? Mm-hmm. Why not make it exciting for kids to be there? So in those classes you saw, my number one problem is getting them to leave. They've got to go home at 5 o'clock. And the reason that they're there to see their friends and to be in a space that's comfortable. So if I can do that and provide that, they're going to want to be there. So that's how you could do it there. Make sure that the schools treat kids in a way so they want to be in school.
The only other thing that I would add is just emphasis on sparking young people's interest. There's a new book that's interesting in the sense that it really talks about the kids that are very disadvantaged, that have no role models, live in the highest crime neighborhoods. It's called Growing Up in the Other America, that talks about the importance of an identity project that enables the kids to kind of bridge and go through some of the hardest challenges of their lives by having something that sparks their interest, and through that they're connecting with peers, with mentors, hopefully, and pursuing something that is enabling them to develop their own values.
Question there.
Hi, Fernando Valenzuela from McGraw-Hill. I just wanted to share, and I've seen your work from a number of years, a couple of experiences. That one is looking at curators from galleries, museums, magazines, and bringing and doing workshops with teachers so they can see what the future of their role has been. So we've been doing that for a number of years, and that has been really powerful. The other thing is this concept of edupreneurship for young kids. Kids at age 11 have 5 years of experience sitting in class, and they can bring this experience with empowerment to change the classroom experience. And the other thing is this connection between the community, the museums, the workload. And I believe that we are all kind of in different parts of the world looking at the same things. So in the past there was, these advanced education systems, and now we need advanced education networks in the world. So hopefully we can connect globally on education.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, we'll go there and then Jose.
Hi. Hi. I'd like you to expand a bit more on knowledge assessment rather than teaching and learning, because for me that seems to be the burden that's kind of stopping education at the moment. Why? Because there's no incentive for kids, and especially for young adults, to study, because they still get assessed in the same way that they got assessed 100 years ago. And basically, that's the basis for their employment, their career, and their chances. So what are your views on reforming a knowledge assessment and how to bridge the gap with continuous learning? Thank you.
So you're right, that's the key, because the tests drive the system. And SAT tests drive the system for here in the United States for getting into college. And so how do you assess? What's interesting is that when you apply for a job, nobody asks you what your SAT score was, and when they ask you about what projects you've been involved in and what you've done. So that is one of the things that I'm working on, is to see how we can assess more effectively projects. And so the people that I've been targeting are the admissions officers for colleges, because they're the gatekeepers. As long as they're basing assessment and entrance to college based on those scores, everybody's going to keep doing it. So, I'd love to have any help you guys could offer on this. So I've met with a few of the people. I met with the Dean of Admissions at Stanford and Harvard. They set the pace for the country, but that's what we need to do. I mean, my assessment is, I can see it every single week, when they produce that. And my question is to other people, can you do that? They get tech skills. I mean, they can program, they can code, they can do everything we're looking for. So, and my test is the product. So that's my idea. That's what we need.
One of the things that we're doing is, and you're right, we need to really change the paradigm around what counts as learning and how we value learning, in addition to basically what you're learning. And one of the ways we're doing that is through digital badges that enable the young person not only to learn, but to produce. So they're very much production-centered. And for the assessor to really see the full set of somebody's, not just ability to memorize the information, but to actually be creative and to apply that knowledge. The other aspect of badges is that they're stackable. So you could be actually learning something about app development here, data science there, fashion there, and you can bring them together. But I'll note one thing is in our our moonshot, our focus is not necessarily on earning as many badges as possible, but allowing kids to explore their interests and then determine if they want to commit to earning a badge in certain area because that matters to them. And at the end of the day, they own that badge and they get to decide if they want to share that badge with anyone else. So we're working with LinkedIn to get a badge to appear on your LinkedIn profile if that's what you want, or if you want to use it on your college application.
So could I just talk about badges for a minute?
Sure.
So I've been in the badging space for a while. I don't know, did I tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I started a company called classbadges.com. And one of the problems that we found is that there's not much acceptance of the badges. And so fortunately I sold it to another company. And, but the problem still exists. Mm-hmm. And so, while kids are working for badges, I think we need to have community support for the badging system, or it's just really not going to work.
Yeah.
Okay. Jose.
I have two quick questions about the idea of flipping the classroom, because it was not explicitly mentioned. So first, what do you think about it? And second, would it be better to use it at the elementary level or at the university level? Higher or lower education, if you think it is a good idea, flipping the classroom? Thank you.
First of all, how many of you are familiar with what we mean by flipped classroom? So the traditional model is you go to school, you sit in class, you learn, you go off home and you do some homework on your own. Then you're tested alone. The flipped classroom basically says, at home, watch some videos and do the learning. When you come in, you collaboratively work on your homework with other kids, which much more mimics a real-world environment. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, so the flipped classroom is lecture online. So instead of the teacher lecturing in class, they lecture online and then you watch it at home. The results show that a lot of the kids don't watch it. But, so where should it start? I would say that it should start in elementary school, so kids get used to it, and then continue through high school, but teachers should not be doing 50 minutes of it, because I can tell you they're not going to watch it. And in the university, I mean, it's useful to have it. Again, it should be limited. And the idea is it's good because you come to class and then you work with your peers to collaborate on a project that was talked about in the video. But, I think it's got its drawbacks also.
Yep.
Leila,
Yeah.
same thing? Okay. Question back there?
Yeah, my name is Michael Warner, and I'm a career and technical educator at a small rural high school just north of Seattle. So I have many of the ingredients that you mentioned in my classroom already. Yet, just recently, I think within the last year in the state of Washington, the Board of Education raised their graduation requirements from 22 to 24 credits, and they were all academic credits offsetting the classes. I teach hands-on classes. I mean, even more. The pendulum went even more extreme. So the Board of Education and the legislator, where do they play into your picture? How do you move those people at the speed of the 21st century exponential global grand challenge speed?
So you just have to ask these people, would they like a doctor to operate on them that all they did was go through 4 years of reading books? Right. So, I mean, we need to have the real world things taking place, project-based learning. Or how about, can you learn to ride a bike by reading a book about it? Or how about, why don't we all become Olympic swimmers by watching the Olympics? So we need to educate administrators and policymakers, which is actually one of the things that I'm doing. I'm going next week, or 2 weeks to New York. I've also spoken at the European Union. Everybody gets it. It's just that, you have to point it out. They forget that just because you sit in class and memorize more doesn't mean that you've actually learned it. It just means that you're really good at memorizing and you're really good at taking tests. And I would bet the majority of the people in this audience were really good at projects.
Okay. We're running out of time. Just to say, I'm a pessimist on trying to fix the existing system. I don't think you can do it. It's too stuck in, it's a logjam of regulators and teachers' unions and textbook publishers, and it's easy to fall back to the testing model from a governance perspective.
Right.
And so people just stay there. There's one fascinating outcome that's happened recently in Silicon Valley, which is GitHub. How many of you are familiar with GitHub? Which is an open platform for learning software coding, where you do instant messaging, etc. But I can rate your code. You can give me a Yelp review on my rating on my code, open source repositories. It's been so successful that your salary as a software developer in Silicon Valley today has no bearing to the university you went to, the grades you got, or the degree you got. It's 100% graded by what is your GitHub rating. So the value of a computer science degree just went to zero. And with a combination of that, plus badges and other mechanisms, will kind of route around the existing system, in my personal hope. So with that, thank you very much for a great panel, great discussion. We're going to close it off there. Thank you.